All right, guys, good morning to you. Happy Monday. It is Monday, July 27th, 2020. And this morning, we're going to talk about your family blueprint. We're going to be talking about family all week this week. Let's get started.
It is ultimately important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life. And then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up.
All right, guys, good morning to you. What's happening? Hope you guys are all having an awesome Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome back. This week, we have some surprises for you this week. So we've got a little bit different. We're going to approach this a little bit different this week. We're going to talk about a similar topic all week. So we're going to talk about different aspects of that topic all week. And this week, we're going to talk about family. We're going to be talking about family. And in addition to talking about family, man, I got a special treat for you guys on Wednesday, July 29th. We have a person that I'm lucky to call a dear friend. These guys are almost like family to me. Mr. Keith Calloway Sr. When I think about the word family, I don't think I could find anybody else that would be better to put in front of you guys than Mr. Keith Calloway Sr. He is the definition of it. And we're going to do an interview. We're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about a lot of other things as well. So I wanted to try this format out where we kind of dig in on the same topic for an extended, period of time here for 5 days. And I think it'll be effective. I think, we'll get a lot out of this, and it'll be a way for people to actually, maybe have a deeper understanding or deeper learning about the things that we talk about. So with that said, want to say good morning to some folks. What's happening, Larry? Good morning to you. Tammy, Trisha, congratulations to Trisha on completing 75 hard. My girl was off quietly killing it. And we could notice on our conference calls the transformation that was happening. But man, couldn't be more proud of her. And nothing quite like failing a couple of times and still pushing forward and achieving. Those are the times in your life that really, really change you. So congratulations to you. Dean, good morning to you. Bruce Pulver, good morning. My wife is watching with, we got a new coffee machine. Our friends, Chris and Leanne Saunders, sent us this unbelievable Breville espresso machine. And man, that thing makes incredible coffee. I got some right here this morning. Not only did Chris buy us the coffee maker, but also every single thing that could go with it, and made an 8-minute long video about how to use the coffee maker, which thank goodness he did, because it is not the easiest thing to learn how to use. But man, when you get it right, whew, Starbucks is dead to me, boy. Starbucks is dead to me. What's happening? Who's that? Everybody's names just went away for a second there. Oh, what's happening, Ed? Good morning. Lydia, Jeff Baker, Dayton, good morning to you, man. Jared Bird, good morning. Hope you guys are safe down there in Texas. So let's talk about this morning, guys. We're gonna talk a little bit about your family blueprint. I like to say, your blueprint is kind of, the thing that guides you in those moments where you just make instantaneous decisions. Your blueprint is what makes those decisions. And is you could call it your subconscious mind, you could call it all kinds of things, but ultimately, your blueprint's going to play a huge role in making those types of decisions, because what you have learned, what you have experienced, is going to trigger those things to make you instantly make a decision one way or the other. And so I want you guys to think about that as you go into this week, and you start making decisions, or you start reacting to the things that happen within your life, think about how that kind of attaches to your upbringing. Are you saying things that you were said that were said to you when you were a child, right? Are you just repeating those things back without really understanding the meaning of them? So I want you to think about, what your upbringing was like and how those moments or those things or those phrases that were said to you, or, how you were just brought up, how that is transferring over into kind of how you're doing things today, right? So think about what your upbringing was like, and then are you doing those same things? And I want you to think about it from this perspective. It is very rare that, somebody comes out of a family and has completely different beliefs than the people in it. And I don't mean, specific things, but I mean just overall, thoughts. An example would be, if you were raised in a Democratic family or Republican family, you're probably likely to follow that same path, right? Because you're going to be raised with similar beliefs or things like that. And I'm not trying to get political here. I'm just using that as an example. But what you are taught is likely, what you're going to end up like. Now, if you had an upbringing that you didn't approve of, or you didn't think was very good, then you could likely go the opposite way of those things, right? But your family blueprint and how you were raised is woven into you very deep. And so you have to understand all of those things. You have to think through those things. You have to write things down that you are doing today that are like how you're raised. And you have to evaluate that. One of the things that I have started thinking about more, and Andy Frisella has actually shared this on his Instagram stories recently, and it got me thinking about it, because I think that, I have always tried to be this way, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it as frequently as possible. I want to be an independent thinker. So I don't want to just assume something is right or wrong based on what other people have told me. I want to think independently for myself, and I want to pursue knowledge. I want to pursue education so that I really understand what I'm doing, the actions that I'm taking, the conversations that I'm having, the way that I am able to impact people. Certainly is a collection of the things that I have experienced in my life, starting with how I was raised in my family. But I also want that to be indicative of the education that I've given myself. Eli is on here. Eli and I were having a conversation about a couple of people yesterday, and I was talking about how one person was significantly more studied than another person. And it's something that when we hung up the phone, it stood out to me, that I thought to myself, man, I want to be more well-studied, right? I want to educate myself so that I am truly an independent thinker. Doesn't mean that the values that my parents taught me aren't incredibly important. They are. In some people's situations, the things that you were taught are things that you have to unlearn, right? And I think there are probably things in all of our lives that no matter how good of a job our parents have done, we have to unlearn some of the things that they have taught us if we want to go to the next level, right? If we want to do better than the last generation in our family, then we have to unlearn some of the things that we were taught. An example of that, I think that if you ask my mom, she would tell you that she was not happy about me starting a business when I had 3 children and absolutely no backup plan. I don't think she was happy about that. I think that made her nervous, right? But for me, that is part of being an independent thinker, I guess. I didn't think of it this way back then, but I knew in my gut that that was something that I needed to do, that I needed to take that jump, and I needed to commit to it, because if I didn't, it would be something that I would regret later on in life. So I want you to think about those things that you were taught. Some of those things, I always use a couple of these phrases, but a penny saved is, everybody was taught, a penny saved is a penny earned. But really, guys, it's just a penny. And I want you to think about that, because some of those things that you were taught when you were just a little boy or just a little girl, those things molded your mind to start believing things to be a certain way. No different than I preach all the time about turning the news off, because the news cycle, as they call it, as you hear things repeatedly over and over and over again, those things become facts to you. And it is proven that someone can hear an absolute lie over and over and over again, and eventually they will start to believe it. And so if that was the case, you know, when you were a kid and you were hearing these things, that, you know, now as an adult, you have the opportunity to actually evaluate and decide, are they true or untrue? Are those things actually true? I will give Mr. Grant Cardone credit for helping me unlearn a lot of things about money, about business, about investing your money versus saving your money, and how much do you need to save versus how much you should be investing. And so I would ask you guys to think about that, because, you know, for me, as I became, as I got settled into business as an adult, and I started to get around, people that had different thoughts, you know, I figured out that all I knew was, you know, kind of the surroundings that I had as a kid. And as I got out of, you know, those surroundings, and I started to meet different people that had different thoughts, I really started to evaluate those things versus my own beliefs. And I think, you know, one of the most powerful things that we can do in our lives to be able to go to the next level is to, as my friend and mentor, Jay Duran says, is to unlearn those things that we thought we knew. So those things that are woven into you from your family blueprint, from your upbringing, it takes hard work and discipline and commitment to be able to unlearn some of those things. For some people, it's very painful to even be able to admit that they need to unlearn those things, because in some way, they feel like they are hurting their family's feelings by unlearning some of those things, right? They're leaving the nest, and they feel like they may be shunned by unlearning some of those things. And I would encourage you to think about it from the aspect that I just mentioned of being an independent thinker, as opposed to just running with the path that has already been set for you. And that doesn't mean to just go against the grain all the time. It just means to become an independent thinker. And the way that you are able to do that, the way that I have worked on that myself, is to really get some quiet time in your life to be able to think. And I say this all the time, but I don't think enough of us take quiet time every single day to really get our thoughts right, to really, spend time with your spirit, to spend time with yourself that can untie those knots that you have going on in your life, in your mind. And a lot of those, they may be, in some people's cases, mapped back to your family blueprint. The same is true with those positive things, right? Those things, I could give you guys a list a mile long of the things that serve me every single day, that my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, my family taught me that were positives. And the way that I know that is that I've tried them and they have worked. And so I would ask you to evaluate those things that you are using in your life every single day, those phrases that you use. I find myself using the same phrases and words that drove me crazy when I was a kid that my dad would say to me or my mom would say to me. I use those same phrases with my children today. And I would ask you to consider why I would do that. Obviously, I must be thinking that they worked. And so when I try them on my children and I start to see positive results, now I am independently thinking and testing those things and confirming that they work. And then I'm using them over and over and over again to mold my children the same way that my parents molded me and my brother. So think about that. You know, are the decisions that you make today a result of the things that you have been taught as a kid? And are those your thoughts, or are they the thoughts that you were taught and you just consumed them and made them facts? Because all of them are not true. And I have had this conversation many times in coaching, but we talk about generation to generation how different things are. And especially for, you know, I am 41 years old, so I remember the transition from, you know, no technology into the technology era. And I would also ask you to consider the differences between how our parents had to raise us and the challenges that they face versus what we face raising children today. And it is very different. You know, what worked years ago will not work today. One of the examples I could share with you guys is I was coaching a digital marketing company down in the Caribbean, Judd's company. And we were talking about, you know, those young men and women grew up on an island, right? And they were raised by their parents, who, when their parents were growing up, they had no access to the technology that we have today to be able to reach out past that island and really connect and generate income and build businesses that could leverage things beyond that island. You know, it's very difficult for them. But today, if you just took the advice of those folks who have never experienced that type of technology, you would be living back in those times. And so I think we miss some of that being in the country that we live in because we take a lot for granted, right? We don't evaluate those things because it's just been kind of an evolution. But it is the same for our parents. You know, there are big debates over all kinds of things that you know, people who are older will tell you are wrong or right, or, you know, they have very strong opinions about things that I'm not sure that they have a lot of knowledge about, in fairness. And so I would just ask you to think about that. What your family blueprint looked like, and how is that impacting your thoughts and decisions today? And I want to finish on this one. You know, this is something that I have, you know, worked on last night during my Sunday evening planning. But what I want to do in my own life, we did an exercise as a company last week that was super impactful. It was about setting our core values. And the exercise goes like this. And so what I want to do to explain further, I want to implement this same exercise into my family and to set some core values for what our little tribe here is going to live by. And the exercise goes like this. So you think of 3 people that have had a huge impact on your life, that, you know, with those 3 people, you feel like you could do almost anything in this world. And you write those 3 people down on a piece of paper. And then you take a minute and you write down all of the attributes and traits and characteristics that those 3 people possess that you admire, that mean the most to you, that make them stand out to you. And then you start working that list down. You start combining the words that are similar. You know, like honesty and integrity are almost one and the same, right? They're very similar, but one of those words is going to stick out more to you than another. And so you go through that list and you start to create a list of core values for your company or for your family, maybe for yourself. But you start to figure out what it is that really means the most to you. And those things that mean the most to you those are your core values. Those are the things that you live by. And when you start to have challenges in your life, you will find that most of the time, the people around you, those people you are interacting with at that very moment, for some reason, they're probably violating one of those things that you feel strongly about. And so I tell you that because the last point that I want to make here is I think it's important for you to think about, are you running your family if you have one today? Are you running your family? If you don't have a family, are you running your life with intention today? Or are you just duplicating exactly what you experienced growing up? And I think that if you don't spend the time to unpack your family blueprint, that there's a very high likelihood that you will just rinse and repeat the same experience or most of the same experiences that you had growing up. And so everybody should have a passion about living their own life and creating their own legacy or their own imprint on this world. And so as you think about your family blueprint, and you think about what you want your family blueprint or your life blueprint to be for yourself, it takes a lot of thought, and it takes a lot of honesty, and it takes a lot of courage to figure that out. Because there's a lot of tough things that you have to think about when you think about, the things that you have just done or said with really no independent thinking put into them. And they could have, not done well by someone else. They could have upset someone else. They could have, made somebody angry. And so I want you to think about that. Think about those things that you are repeating into your life that were just duplicated from the family blueprint that you have experienced. Good and bad, by the way. But I want you to be aware. I want you to be an independent thinker when it comes to every decision that you make. And as Bruce said in the comments just a moment ago, our words matter, and they do matter. And the way that we inspire people matters. The way that we motivate people matters. The way that we conversate with people when we're holding them accountable. There are things that, as a father, I need to reevaluate, and figure out, are those things, working? It doesn't mean that my parents did it wrong. It means that maybe times have changed and I need to take a different approach than my parents did. Make sense? Same is true with your friends, with your family, with your relationships, with everything. But your family blueprint plays a huge role in how you function, how you treat other people, whether you trust or don't trust people, whether you have a lot of faith in the people around you, or whether you are always questioning things. And so I would ask you to think about those things and untangle those knots that you might have in your life, because it is unfair to treat another person in accordance to something that happened to you growing up. Mr. Calloway, the Calloway family lives by a rule that I love. When I went out there, I heard this rule. It said, trust is given once. And so for those who have a challenge trusting people as a result of their family blueprint, I would encourage you to trust once. Everybody gets one. And let them prove you wrong. Don't lack trust because of something you've been through. right? And that is an important one. That's just one example. But I want to leave you with just a summary of all of this. Think about your upbringing. Think about how it has impacted you positively or negatively, right? And really think about it. Write those things down. What are the things that you are just so proud to be able to carry around with you about that blueprint? What are the things that maybe are, need change because of the times? And what are the things that you absolutely don't want to repeat in your life? How is that impacting the things that you do today? Do you find yourself repeating those things that you were taught when you were a kid without actually thinking about what they mean? Think about that. And then I encourage you to think about how you can run your life and your family with massive intention. And, to this point, I've been intentional, that I have a clear vision of what I want for my family. But I think that, both my wife and I can do a better job of aligning that, making it very specific, because isn't it true that if we create crystal clear values for our lives, for our families, that the accountability of living up to those and being honest with ourselves about living up to those will create children that turn into adults that possess those qualities that mean the most to us. So I want you to think about that as you go into the week. This week, we're going to talk about family every single day, something related to family. And so I wanted to start with Family Blueprint because I think it's the foundation of everything that we do. Every decision we make, every reaction that we have, it is all part of, a subconscious thinking that starts with what we were taught when we were very, very little. And I want you guys to just think about that one. I know that's kind of deep and hard to do going into work on a Monday morning here, but think about it. Set an alarm for tonight at 7:00 on your phone and take 30 minutes to think about this. Grab a piece of paper and write some things down. I think you'll be amazed at what you figure out. What you uncover might be interesting. And as you continuously evaluate yourself as you go through your day to day, you'll start to pick these things out that you do. I've been doing it for years. From the day that Grant Cardone started talking about the things that were said to us as kids, like a penny saved is a penny earned, it started making me think about all of that, and, as you start to untangle that, you will start to find more of yourself, right? And to be the best version of yourself, the first thing you have to do is find you. And sometimes you is just covered up by a little bit of stuff that you've been carrying with you. And so if you can figure out what that stuff is, identify it, and live intentionally by recreating the values that you stand for, not that somebody else stood for. Very important. So I hope it was helpful for you guys. I'm wishing you an amazing week, and I will see you again tomorrow morning right here, same place, same time, 7:30 a.m. on Morning Perspective. Please don't forget, Wednesday, July 29th, 7:30 a.m. You do not want to miss the episode with Mr. Keith Calloway Sr. I promise you this man will drop knowledge and just, you don't want to miss it. Knowledge, care, the perfect example of a family man. He's one of the greatest men that I've ever come in contact with. I say that to everybody that asks me about him, and I couldn't be more proud to be having him on the show and more proud to be his friend. So I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Please share this out and share the message about Wednesday's show with your friends, with your family. Everybody wants to meet Mr. Keith Calloway Sr. I will see you guys tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Love you guys.